Oops, I didn't mean to stop it there. Sorry. Anyway, he's talking about how life is immediate. We've talked about that before, instant gratification. You know, when you take your quizzes and you ask me, is it going to tell us our score at the end? Well, when I was young, it took days before we found out the scores of our tests. But our generation, this generation right now, needs immediate gratification, and that's what he's talking about. The fact that school and all the important things in school are starting to be gradually ignored. Think about your texting. Do you ever capitalize things? Not normally. I see it in your papers. But the thing is that some people don't care. You change the language. We've dumbed the language down. We talked about that even with Poe, how he wrote in a normal language and half the words we can't even understand. But that's what Beatty is saying has happened in this society. Nobody cares anymore. Let me fix your pillow, said Mildred. No, whispered Montag. The zipper displaces the button and a man lacks just that much time to think while dressing at dawn, a philosophical hour and thus a melancholy hour. So the time that you're supposed to be thinking the most is considered to be a sad time. Mildred said, Here, get away, said Montag. Life becomes one big pratfall, Montag. Everything bang, boff, and wow. Wow, said Mildred, yanking at the pillow. For God's sakes, let me be, cried Montag passionately. Beatty opened his eyes wide. Mildred's hand had frozen behind the pillow. Her fingers were tracing the book's outline, and as the shape became familiar, her face looked surprised and then stunned. Her mouth opened to ask a question. Empty the theaters save for the clowns, and furnish the rooms with glass walls and pretty colors running up and down the walls like confetti or blood or sherry or sauterne. You like baseball, don't you, Montag? Baseball's a fine game. Now Beatty was almost invisible, a voice somewhere behind a screen of smoke. What's this? Asked Mildred, almost with delight. Montag heaved back against her arms. What's this here? Sit down, Montag shouted. She jumped away, her hands empty. We're talking. Beatty went on as if nothing had happened. You like bowling, don't you, Montag? Bowling, yes. And golf? Golf is a fine game. Basketball, a fine game. Billiards, pool, football, fine games, all of them. More sports for everyone. Group spirit, fun, and you don't have to think, eh? Organize and super sports. More cartoons and books, more pictures. The mind drinks less and less. Impatience, highways full of crowds going somewhere, nowhere. The gasoline refugee. Towns turned into motels, people in nomadic surges from place to place, following the moon tides, living tonight in the room where you slept this moon and I the night before. So again, what Beatty's talking about is very important, and I hope you can see the connection to what's happening today. Think about how important sports has become. It wasn't always like that. You ask most kids in this generation, what are you going to be when you grow up? Professional athlete. Well, the chances are very slim that every child who plays football in a youth league or baseball in a youth league is actually going to grow up and go pro. But that's the dream that all these kids have, because that's what's impressed upon them in our society, just as Ray Bradbury predicted it would be. You talk about more cartoons and books, more pictures. We have graphic novels now. Think about it. You actually can read a graphic novel of a classic novel, cut it down, turn it into pictures. It keeps it more entertaining. Talking about highways full of crowds. Think about rush hour traffic in Atlanta. Could you imagine having a job that it takes you an hour and a half to drive to in the morning and an hour and a half back? That's the livelihood of a lot of people. It wasn't like that in the 50s. Talking about towns turned into motels. Think about all of the motels and hotels. Think about the extended stay motels where you can go and stay there for a week, and then you move out, and then you go to a different one. A lot of people don't have homes in our society. They live in apartments, they're transient, they move a lot. Back in the 50s, people didn't do that. You bought a house, you usually stayed in the town where you grew up. There's a lot of what Beatty's saying in this that's actually come true today. Mildred went out of the room and slammed the door. The parlor aunts began to laugh and the parlor uncles. Now let's take up the minorities in our civilization, shall we? Bigger the population, the more minorities. Don't step on the toes of the dog lovers, the cat lovers, doctors, lawyers, merchants, chiefs, Mormons, Baptists, Unitarians, second-generation Chinese, Swedes, Italians, Germans, Texans, Brooklynites, Irishmen, people from Oregon or Mexico. The people in this book, this play, this TV serial are not meant to represent any actual painters, cartographers, mechanics anywhere. The bigger your market, Montag, the less you handle controversy. Remember that. All the minor minorities with their navels to be kept clean, authors full of evil thoughts, lock up your typewriters. They did. Magazines become a nice blend of vanilla tapioca. Books, so the damn snobbish critics said, were dishwater. No wonder books stopped selling, the critics said. But the public, knowing what they wanted, spinning happily, let the comic books survive. And the three-dimensional sex magazines, of course. There you have it, Montag. It didn't come from the government down. There was no dictum, no declaration, no censorship to start with. No. Technology, mass exploitation, and minority pressure carried the trick, thank God. Today, thanks to them, you can stay happy all the time. You're allowed to read comics, the good old confessions, or trade journals. You know what political correctness is, right? You don't want to say anything, even if it's true, that might offend somebody else. That's what he's talking about. They didn't have political correctness in the 1950s. Most people said whatever they thought, and if it bothered somebody, you kind of sucked it up and you moved it along. But that's the problem with today. Anybody that says anything that offends somebody, it causes a problem. Nobody has a thick skin anymore. That's why a lot of these people are saying, you know, there's cupcakes out there, and there's all kinds of different things about people that they get bothered so very easily. And that's what Bradbury's saying. You have to be very careful about what you say. And that's what Beatty's rationale is. That's why the books went away. It wasn't because the government made it happen. It's because people made it happen. Nobody cared anymore. You're going to have a book out there that's going to offend somebody? Get rid of it. That way nobody's going to be offended. Comic books are fun. We're going to read those. 3D sex magazines? It's a Playboy. People are probably always going to read those, unfortunately. But the thing is what he's trying to say. It was technology, which we have a lot of, mass exploitation, and minority pressure, people being offended. That's what changed things. I hope you're able to see the connection with our current society. This is all part of his imagination, a future that he didn't even think was going to exist. And unfortunately, he's describing a large part of what's happening in our future right now. Yes, but what about the firemen then? Asked Montag. Ah, Beatty leaned forward in the faint mist of smoke from his pipe. What more easily explained and natural? With school turning out more runners, jumpers, racers, tinkerers, grabbers, snatchers, flyers, and swimmers, instead of examiners, critics, knowers, and imaginative creators, the word intellectual, of course, became the swear word it deserved to be. You always dread the unfamiliar. Surely you remember the boy in your own school class who was exceptionally bright, did most of the reciting and answering while the others sat back like so many leaden idols hating him. And wasn't it this bright boy you selected for beatings and for torture after hours? Of course it was. We must all be alike. Not everyone born free and equal, as the Constitution says, but everyone made equal. Each man the image of every other. Then all are happy, for there are no mountains to make them cower, to judge themselves against. So, a book is a loaded gun in the house next door. Burn it. Take the shot from the weapon. Breach man's mind. Who knows who might be the target of a well-read man? Me? I won't stomach them for a minute. And so when houses were finally fireproofed completely all over the world, yes, you were correct in your assumption the other night, there was no longer a need for firemen for the old purposes. They were given the new jobs as custodians of our peace of mind, the focus of our understandable and rightful dread of being inferior. Official censors, judges, and executors. That's you, Montag, and that's me. What do you think about it? That nobody can be an individual, that everybody has to be the same. He said that's what makes you happy. Conformity. You can't be jealous of someone who has more than you if you all have the same. You can't be jealous of someone who has a better job than you, a better education, because you all have the same. He says it's not what the Constitution says, that we're born free and equal and have free choice and free will. That doesn't do any good. That creates competition and unrest. It's a whole lot better just to make everybody all the same, and then nobody has to worry about it. The door to the parlor opened, and Mildred stood there looking in at them, looking at Beatty and then at Montag. Behind her, the walls of the room were flooded with green and yellow and orange fireworks, sizzling and burning to some music composed almost completely of trap drums, tom-toms, and cymbals. Her mouth moved, and she was saying something, but the sound covered it. Beatty knocked his pipe into the palm of his pink hand, studied the ashes as if they were a symbol to be diagnosed and searched for meaning. You must understand that our civilization is so vast that we can't have our minorities upset and stirred. Ask yourself, what do we want in this country above all? People want to be happy. Isn't that right? Haven't you heard it all your life? I want to be happy, people say. Well, aren't they? Don't we keep them moving? Don't we give them fun? That's all we live for, isn't it? For pleasure, for titillation? And you must admit our culture provides plenty of these. Yes. Montag could lip read what Mildred was saying in the doorway. He tried not to look at her mouth, because then Beatty might turn and read what was there too. Colored people don't like Little Black Sambo. Burn it. White people don't feel good about Uncle Tom's Cabin. Burn it. Someone's written a book on tobacco and cancer of the lungs. The cigarette people are weeping. Burn the book. Serenity, Montag. Peace, Montag. Take your fight outside. Better yet, into the incinerator. Funerals are unhappy and pagan. Eliminate them too. 5 minutes after a person's dead, he's on his way to the big flue, the incinerator serviced by helicopters all over the country. 10 minutes after death, a man's a speck of black dust. Let's not quibble over individuals with memoriams. Forget them. Burn all, burn everything. Fire is bright and fire is clean. So that's proving his point. Little Black Sambo was a book that came out a long, long time ago, and it was not something that I guess gave a positive outlook on African Americans. And then Uncle Tom's Cabin came out, and it kind of painted a lot of white Southerners as slave owners, and so it made each race look pretty bad in the eyes of the other. So what he's saying is if something comes out and it's offensive, get rid of it. If you don't have anything out there that's offensive, then nobody gets worried about it. Everybody wants to be happy. And look what he says about funerals and death. Please. Once they're dead, they're dead. Don't even bother with a memorial. Nowadays in this future, they come get the body, they go burn them. You just go on about your business like they didn't even exist. Don't be sad. They're gone. Why bother? Why worry? That's what he says. Burn all, burn everything. Fire is bright and fire is clean. It gets rid of all the unpleasantness. But do you think that really makes people happy? The fireworks died in the parlor behind Mildred. She had stopped talking. At the same time, a miraculous coincidence, Montag held his breath. There was a girl next door, he said slowly. She's gone now, I think. Dead. I can't even remember her face, but she was different. How did she happen? Beatty smiled. Here or there's bound to occur. Clarice McClellan, we've had a record on her family. We watched them carefully. Heredity and environment are funny things. You just can't rid yourselves of all the odd ducks in just a few years. The home environment can undo a lot you try to do at school. That's why we've lowered the kindergarten age year after year until now we're almost snatching them from the cradle. We have some false alarms on the McClellans when they lived in Chicago. Never found a book. Uncle had a mixed record, antisocial. The girl, she was a time bomb. The family had been feeding her subconscious, I'm sure, from what I saw of her school record. She didn't want to know how a thing was done, but why. That can be embarrassing. You ask why to a lot of things, and you wind up very unhappy indeed if you keep at it. That poor girl's better off dead. Yes, dead. Now again, something to look at. One of the things that we talk about now is whose job is it to raise children? Is it a parent's job? Is it the school's job? Because again, school is run by the government. In the book, he's saying that they keep dropping the age of kindergarten until they're almost infants. Preschool starts very young now. So he's giving the excuse that parents are dangerous. Parents shouldn't raise their own children. Put every kid in school, let the government instruct them, let the government teach them. That way everybody's taught the same thing. Luckily, queer ones like her don't happen often. We know how to nip most of them in the bud early. You can't build a house without nails and wood. If you don't want a house built, hide the nails and wood. If you don't want a man unhappy politically, don't give him two sides to a question to worry him. Give him one. Better yet, give him none. Let him forget there's such a thing as war. If the government is inefficient and top-heavy and tax-mad, better it be all those than the people worry over it. Peace, Montag. Give the people contests they win by remembering the words to more popular songs or the names of state capitals or how much corn Iowa grew last year. Cram them full of non-combustible data. Chock them so damn full of facts they feel stuffed, but absolutely brilliant with information. Then they'll feel they're thinking. They'll get a sense of motion without moving, and they'll be happy because facts of that sort don't change. Don't give them any slippery stuff like philosophy or sociology to tie things up with. That way lies melancholy. Any man who can take a TV wall apart and put it back together again, and most men can nowadays, is happier than any man who tries to slide rule, measure, or equate the universe, which won't be measured or equated without making a man feel bestial and lonely. I know, I've tried it. To hell with it. So bring on your clubs and parties, your acrobats and magicians, your daredevils, jet cars, motorcycle helicopters, your sex and your heroin. More of everything to do with automatic reflex. If the drama is bad, if the film says nothing, if the play is hollow, sting me with the theremin loudly. I'll think I'm responding to the play when it's only a tactile reaction to vibration. But I don't care. I just like solid entertainment. Beatty got up. I must be going. Lecture's over. I hope I've clarified things. The most important thing for you to remember, Montag, is we're the happiness boys. The Dixie duo, you and I, and the others. We stand against this small tide of those who want to make everyone unhappy with conflicting theory and thought. We have our fingers in the dike. Hold steady. Don't let the torrent of melancholy and drear philosophy drown our world. We depend on you. I don't think you realize how important you are, we are, to our happy world as it stands now. Beatty shook Montag's limp hand. Montag sat still, as if the house were collapsing about him, and he could not move in the bed. Mildred had vanished from the door. One last thing, said Beatty. At least once in his career, every fireman gets an itch. What do the books say, he wonders. Oh, to scratch that itch, eh? Well, Montag, take my word for it. I've had to read a few in my time to know what I was about, and the books say nothing. Nothing you can teach or believe. They're about non-existent people, figments of imagination if they're fiction, and if they're non-fiction, it's worse. One professor calling another an idiot, one philosopher screaming down another's gullet, all of them running about, putting out the stars and extinguishing the sun. You come away lost. Well then, what if a fireman accidentally, really not intending anything, takes a book home with him? Montag twitched. The open door looked at him with its great vacant eye. A natural error. Curiosity alone, said Beatty. We don't get over anxious or mad. We let the fireman keep the book 24 hours. If he hasn't burned it by then, we simply come burn it for him. Of course. Montag's mouth was dry. Well, Montag, will you take another later shift today? Will we see you tonight, perhaps? I don't know, said Montag. What? Beatty looked faintly surprised. Montag shut his eyes. I'll be in later, maybe. We'd certainly miss you if you didn't show, said Beatty, putting his pipe in his pocket thoughtfully. I'll never come in again, thought Montag. Get well and keep well, said Beatty. He turned and went out through the open door. Okay, a couple things about this last part. What Beatty was talking about with the government. Instead of giving two sides, why have Democrats? Why have Republicans? Why have independents? This future, they're saying don't even give them a choice. Nobody cares. You can't have an argument about your candidate if nobody has a choice. If you keep people occupied, you keep people happy, you keep people entertained, nobody's going to care anyway. Look at what he says. If this is not something that's predictive, then I don't know what is. Give the people contests they win by remembering the words to more popular songs or the names of state capitals or how much corn grew in Iowa last year. Remember we said they know facts. They don't think about things. They just kind of regurgitate the facts, and that makes them feel smart. But don't we do this? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Don't we have game shows where they ask questions? Don't we have singing contests on TV? That's entertainment. People show up every week, sit in front of their televisions to watch that happen. Now that we have the way that you, like a DVR, you record it. You can watch it. You can save as many, pretty much shows as you want to watch. But that's exactly what he's saying is happening with people, that we become so engrossed in our own entertainment that we don't know what's happening in the rest of the world. It's kind of scary that he was thinking about these things in the 1950s. And so that's what he says. Bring on your parties, bring on your drugs, bring on your sex, bring on anything at all that's going to take your mind away from the important stuff. It's more important to feel good, to have a good time, to be happy, than to worry over anything in reality. And so, do you think Beatty knows that Montag has a book? Probably, and he's given him an out. But Montag, after listening to all this, has decided he's done. He don't want to do it anymore. Well, that's where I'm going to stop, because this is a lot, and I'm sure probably most of you will have to watch the rest of this at home. So we'll pick up on my page 60 and finish up part 1 on Monday. We'll still have a quiz. I did put the Quizlet out on my website so that you can go out there and look at it. Hope you enjoyed the reading, guys. I'll see you later.